Quote, Nation's report card shows new evidence of COVID-19's devastating impact on U.S. children's education. So, a lot of people would read this article and then cry and whine and whinge, even, about the lockdowns that didn't even happen, by the way, in like 80% of the country. But the lockdowns and the virtual learning killed the kids. Now, again, we're in year 3 of the pandemic. We're about to enter year 4 of the pandemic. And just think about that. 4 years. That's high school. Think about this. Think about it. That is high school. 4 years of a pandemic is that's called high school. You could be graduating middle school as the pandemic begins and then go through all of high school during a pandemic. Isn't that insane? Now, before I get into this article, I want to talk about a couple other things. 83% of Americans under the age of 18 have had COVID at least one time. 83% have had COVID at least one time. 83% of kids under 18s have had COVID. 40% of the time, according to studies, long COVID symptoms can develop. What is the most common long COVID symptom? Brain fog, irritability, inability to pay attention. So think about this. 83% of kids have had COVID. If about 40% of them developed long COVID, brain fog, inability to pay attention, probably inability to study particularly well, probably less good at test taking. And so, now again, a lot of people love to say, virtual learning for 6 months is what really fucked the kids up. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and say a lot of kids have been infected with a debilitating virus that particularly goes after their brain, particularly can affect how they think and behave. That's what I'm going to go out there and say. So let's read this. Fourth and eighth graders fell behind in reading and had the largest ever decline in math, according to a national education assessment showing the devastating effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on America's children. The alarming findings are based on the National Assessment of Education Progress reading and math exams, often called the nation's report card, and conducted by the National Center for Education Statistics, a branch of the Education Department. If this is not a wake-up call for us to double down on our efforts and improve education even before the pandemic, then I don't know what will, U.S. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona told CNN. Now, notice this. It's improve education. We got to improve education. I agree. But notice how the elephant in the room is being ignored. 83% of people under the age of 18 have had COVID. 40%, according to studies, right, develop a form of long COVID. The most common form of long COVID that you develop, brain fog, right? So, I don't know, man. Hey, yes, should we improve learning? Absolutely. But how about we, take care of the pandemic? Is that possible? Maybe? I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't be subjecting our children to medical experimentation against their will? Maybe. Does anyone think about this? If you have a child under the age of 18, there's an 83% chance that child has had COVID at least one time. Now, again, at least one time. If you get COVID 4 or 5 times over the course of a couple of years, that's going to fuck you up, right? So imagine this, right? 4 years, that's the entirety of high school, or in this case, middle school and elementary school. You can go through an extended period of your education being under the influence of, again, constantly getting reinfected with a virus that you shouldn't be. Now, again, if we did mass lockdowns in 2020, all of this wouldn't be happening. This wouldn't be happening. If we did mass lockdowns in 2020, again, grocery delivery, pharmaceutical delivery, rent relief, the whole thing. If we did that, which the government is capable of, if we would have done that, we'd be chilling. We'd be chilling right now. Instead, we opened up the schools and gave all of our kids a debilitating illness. Isn't that great? An entire generation An entire generation has been forced to get sick with a debilitating illness for no reason because the adults, think about this. Kids, they grow up, right? You know, and we're talking about kids, teenagers, whatever. They grow up, right? They're kids. They don't understand how the world works. They assume that the adults have their best interest at heart. They assume that. Kids assume that the adult generations are looking after them. Well, one hell of a wake-up call in this country is when an entire generation of children, teenagers, children, young children, right, realize that the adults, people older than them, older generations, threw them under the bus. Now, again, think about this. 83% of kids have been forced, right? If you don't go to school, guess what happens? Police knock down your door and take you away from your parents, right? So 83% of kids have been forced to undergo medical experimentation. We know COVID is airborne. We know schools are poorly ventilated. We know that if you throw 1,000 kids in a school, that they're all going to get sick. We know that. And yet we did it anyway. Think about this. We did it anyway. We knew long COVID was a serious problem. We knew if we sent these kids to school, they would get sick. We knew all of this. And yet, as a society, we did it anyway. And why? For the corporations. So that they could get another quarter of epic profits. That's why. We sacrificed the well-being of an entire generation of kids. An entire generation of kids has been sacrificed the rest of their lives, right? They're going to have to deal with trauma from this pandemic. They're going to have to deal with illness from this pandemic, a whole generation of new pre-existing conditions. Why? So that a couple corporate executives could make some fat cash? Because Americans are selfish fucking morons. And that's just it. That's the world we live in. In the education secretary, I know they're the education secretary, right? Their purview is education. But everyone on media, they're just ignoring the elephant in the room. They don't care about your kid's health. They don't give a shit. Hey, fuck it. Maybe they do care. They want your kid to get sick. Then your kid's going to have to buy health insurance. Yeah, that's right. You're going to have to buy health insurance and go to the doctor. Maybe get on a couple of prescription pills, medications, right? Maybe these private companies are going to be able to make a giant buck off of those pre-existing conditions. Think about it. Let's keep going here. Cardona suggested the widespread teacher shortages are a symptom of decades of underinvestment. You don't say? Like, my hair is a giant fucking disaster today. The first national assessment of student achievement in 3 years revealed the largest math score declines among 4th and 8th graders since the initial trial assessment in 1990, according to the Centers of Valula. The tests were administered between January and March. No state or large urban districts showed improvements in math. The report said 8th grade math scores sank in more than 50 states. In the more than 50 states and jurisdictions. Okay, I was like, what? More than 50 states? What? Okay. In the more than 50 states and jurisdictions participating in the assessment. The last report card was issued in 2019 before the start of the pandemic in the U.S., where schools were shut down and teachers turned to online learning. 8th grade is the gateway to more advanced mathematical course taking, Carr told reporters before the report's release. This is what these students are missing. They're missing these important skills that will prepare them for eventually for science, technology, engineering, and math level careers. The average math score of 236 for the 4th grade was 5 points lower than in 2019. Now, what does 236 mean? We have no idea. These are just numbers that are given to us, and we're supposed to know what that fucking means. 236. And now it's 8 points below 274. What? Okay, whatever. I don't know. Anyway, the numbers mean nothing. The point is that it's going down. They don't tell us what the numbers mean. But again, isn't this weird? Like think about this. If anyone in my audience has kids, don't you feel a little weird sending your child to be stuffed like sardines in a poorly ventilated room where there's a pandemic going on and a virus that is extremely debilitating is going throughout the entire classroom? Doesn't that feel weird? I don't know, maybe. I'm not a parent, right? But like, if I had a kid and the government said, if you don't send this kid to this building, we will steal your kid from you. That's what the government says. If you don't send your kid to school, the government will break your door down and steal your child from you. Unless you can homeschool them. But do you have the fucking resources for that? Do you have the know-how for that? Do you have the knowledge for that? Do you have the time for that? Fuck no, of course not. Right? So, I don't know, man. This is fucked up. This is fucked up. So, you can read the whole article. It goes into the more granular demographics. But I think I've made my point here. I don't know. I feel like I'm a crazy person. I do. I genuinely do. All I know, these are the data points for me. 1, COVID affects your brain. That's step 1. I'm out. I don't want COVID. If it affects your brain, I'm done. Right? I'm out. Bye-bye. That's it. But COVID affects your brain. Long COVID can affect your life for a long time. We've had people infected with COVID for the first time in March and April of 2020, and they still have debilitating long COVID symptoms many years later. Right? 3, what is this for? What is it for? What are we doing this for? Why are we doing this? Again, corporate profits. And I want to jump into another article in a second here about that. But, and again, kids have an entire generation of under 18s have learned a lesson. And that lesson is that the older generations sacrificed their lives and well-beings, their being the children's, not for personal gain, but for corporate gain. So corporate entities can make money. Adults sent their kids to medical experimentation facilities for no reason, right? They're suffering when it comes to learning. They're going to be less equipped to deal with the world now, right? We've got a dumber generation. Think about this. Think about it. Now, again, I don't want to be rude here. A lot of kids are really smart, right? But 83% under 18s have been infected at least one time. At least one time. That's all we have statistics for according to the CDC. At least one. So it could be the fact that like 70% of under 18s have been infected 5 times. Who knows, right? But we know that 40% chance that you can develop long COVID symptoms. We also know, I forgot to mention this earlier, that when you are infected with COVID, if you do not rest properly, you are more likely to develop long COVID. Why is that? Oh, because guess what? When you're sick, you're supposed to rest. But in this fucked up, stupid ass world, if you rest, you're a truant. Oh, you're going to call in sick? Well, now you got to go to a doctor. Now your mom has to take off work to take you to a doctor so you get a doctor's note. Right? Think about this. And what is long COVID most likely to develop? Brain fog. So we have an entire generation that's just going to be dumber. This is like the lead gas of the Zoomer generation. This is lead gas. This is asbestos for that generation. I don't know. By the way, everything I've seen has said the Zoomers are they're going to be one of the largest generations. Just give it another couple decades. There's a lot of Zoomers out there. But think about it. An entire generation that got fucked over. They learned that everyone else fucked them over. They're resentful, and they're going to be dumber than the average human. Now, again, I'm not trying to say that all under 18s are dumb, and I'm not trying to use dumb in an offensive way. I'm just saying, if I were 15 years old and I got sick with COVID 3 times, and I was not allowed to, take a couple sick days because otherwise I'm a truant, and my mom can't afford the time off to take me to a doctor, right? And then, let's say I'm nauseous for several years. Let's say I get dizzy a lot. Let's say I have problems paying attention to things. I have problems thinking straight, and I'm trying to find out why I'm like this, what happened to me. And then I realized, oh, it's all the adults in this world basically forced me to get sick, and now for the rest of my life, we don't know. We don't know. We have no idea how long COVID will develop in its 5th year, or 10th year, or 20th year. We have no idea. Like, it's possible that, like, 10 years after you get COVID, it could be, like, complete liver shutdown. We don't know. And again, all of this for what reason? For what reason? We could have just done a national lockdown for a couple of months in early 2020 during the summer when kids aren't even in school. Imagine this. March. We lock down all the way until August, right? The pandemic is over. It's done. We send kids back to school in September with masks. During that lockdown, by the way, we reformat schools so that they have proper ventilation. We bring in like the whatever filters it is. I forget what the filters are called, right? That help filter the air, right? And then we can learn like normal fucking people. That's not what we did as a society. We decided corporate profits are more important than an entire generation of children and their ability to learn, their ability to participate in society, their ability to be happy, their ability to live a fulfilling life. So, I don't know, man. I'm pretty pissed off. I'm not a Zoomer. I'm 26 years old. But I'm fucking angry on behalf of people younger than me. Because they got fucked over. Really hard. Fucked over. They never had a chance. Think about it. They never had a chance to escape this pandemic. I had a chance. I work from home. I can choose not to leave my house. A 15-year-old can't work from home and choose not to leave their house. A 9-year-old doesn't even really understand what COVID is. It's disappointing. It's disastrous. And it's evil. It's evil. And as a society, everyone wants to pretend like it's not happening. Everyone wants to pretend that this isn't a thing. The adults in the room are children. Think about it. Think about it. A 9-year-old doesn't understand COVID. Does the average 36-year-old understand COVID? Does the average 49-year-old understand COVID? Does the average 63-year-old understand COVID? Probably not. And that's a society-wide failure. Society-wide failure to educate the masses. And again, the CDC is going out there saying, take your mask off, it's all good. The CDC is going out there and lying to people, get back to work if your symptoms are resolving. So anyway, I don't know. But I got more on the pandemic in a second here.